Alright guys, a couple days have passed since we got the Total War Warhammer 3 trailer, and it really got the old wheels spinning, got them juices flowing, especially as it pertains to what a mono Khorne army is going to be looking like in Total War Warhammer 3. So in today's video, we're going to be going through what I think the entire roster will be looking like. We'll look at what I think the army-wide abilities are going to be, because of course Khorne generally doesn't use magic, right? So what I do think, we'll get a little bit of ahead of ourselves, is I do think that Khorne is going to have like a buffing system, very similar to how dwarves have runic magic, and how we do see with like Cain units for the Dark Elves. So for example, we have Skarbrand, who has her buffs there, like the Gaze of Cain. I think we're going to see something very similar, like the Gaze of Khorne, and something in line with that. But anyways, in today's video, we're going to be going through the rosters, so legendary lords, basic units. What units do I think they will be bringing from other rosters? Because of course I think they're going to have like basic marauders, of course, to fill out their chaff slot, maybe a little bit cheaper, because I think bloodletters will probably be another tier up. I don't think bloodletters are going to be their cheapest unit. Anyways, we're going to go through the Khorne roster, just have some fun, do some speculation. I played against Khorne quite a bit in tabletop, but that isn't 40k, and that's mostly Khorne demons, right? So bloodletters, bloodthirsters, all that sort of stuff. So hopefully we can have some fun speculation as to what they'll actually be doing. Should be quite cool. So on that note, guys, let us jump in. Of course, in the trailer, for the longest time, I kind of wondered, I was like, okay, how are they going to do demons? Are they going to have demons be their own mono roster? So you have the Khorne demons, you have the Nurgle demons each, or are they going to do it like they do in tabletop, for example? Of course, you can play mono Khorne armies, and it comes with its own benefits in tabletop, but of course, you can also just have demons mixed together. I'm really glad they took the approach that appears to be mixing mortal followers of Khorne with demons. I think that's really a cool way to go. In the trailer, of course, we saw Bloodletters, we saw Bloodthirsters, and then we also saw the Skull Crushers. So there's Skull Crushers, and then there's Blood Crushers. Blood Crushers are basically the Khorne doggos being rode by Bloodletters, and then of course Skull Crushers are being rode by mortal followers who have been kind of elevated in the eyes of Khorne. So in that case, it seems pretty clear that it's going to be a mono Khorne faction that has a mixture of mortal followers as well as demons, which I actually prefer. I'm really glad they don't have like a demon roster that is all the demons together, because I mean, maybe they'll have that. I'm not sure. Of course, it's not 100% out there yet. That's just my speculation. But, it takes away a little bit of flavor for me if you see like, oftentimes the Chaos Gods are always fighting, right? Like Skarbrand, for example, like was one of the first to go like bash down like Slaaneish's palace in the lore. There's all sorts of crazy stuff, right? So they're fighting. I think it's cool to have them have their own unique flavor. Granted, in campaign, I can see them like working together at some point, perhaps if there's like an event. But I think that's cool for like Chaos Undivided to be able to kind of unify those forces. And that leads me on to talk about Chaos Undivided, which I think they're eventually like the Warriors of Chaos, right? I think they might get the basics of each of the mono factions. So you have like Khorne, right? And then from there, you're going to be having, I think Chaos Undivided might get Bloodletters, Plague Bearers, maybe Blue Horrors or whatever, and then Demonettes. But I don't think they're going to get like other more advanced demons. I think that's going to be for the mono specific factions. Anyways, it seems clear. Just to summarize my ranting, I think that we're going to be getting factions that are a combination of mortal followers and specialist units mixed with the demons. Anyways, so let's begin by talking about the army effects. I'm pretty sure, obviously it's very heavily hinted at. Like a lot of units that have that Berserker property, and Khorne is he's the Berserker, right? He's the dude. I think there's going to be some sort of like a frenzy effect for them. But obviously Norska has its own unique frenzy. We have units that have frenzy that get immunopsychology. They get a couple other basic stats. It'd be cool to see them get their own unique frenzy, like the Rage of Khorne is their passive, and essentially what this could do. And there's a multitude of ways you could go about this, but maybe as the unit begins to take more and more damage, they get more and more berserk, and they get like buffed up. That would be interesting. I don't know how that would work from like a balancing perspective. I'm just kind of speculating here. But perhaps they could get something that's unique to Khorne. Maybe it could be a better version of Frenzy. That would be the more simplistic way to do it. Frenzy is already a mechanic they've had in the game. It's tried and true. You don't need to worry about rebalancing it too much. But you could do an upgraded Frenzy. You could do one where basically or just Frenzy plus when they take more damage, they get even more bloodthirsty because their own blood is coming. They're just getting more fired up for Khorne, that kind of thing. And they just become unbreakable, etc., etc. So that could be kind of interesting. On top of that, I'm talking about another army effect. Obviously, magic is a huge part of Total War Warhammer. Currently, we do, of course, have the dwarves who don't really have access to magic, but they have a runic magic system. Now, I think for Khorne, we're going to see something very similar. I think their lords, their basic lords, their legendary lords may have effects that give combat buffs like activated abilities. So this could be like Gaze of Cain for the Dark Elves. Currently with Skarbrand or, the different shrines, you can use the Witch's Brew to buff up units. I can see that being like a Khorne buff that makes it berserk and do a ton of damage. I think we're going to be seeing something like that. So, for example, the Bloodthirsters might have something like this. The Demon Princes might have something like this. We also do have the Heralds of Khorne, which I think could also be a buffing unit and could be the equivalent of a caster. very similar to like a runesmith or something like that, I think that would be a very cool way to implement it. I also do believe that the Khorne army, because generally speaking, Khorne is very averse to magic, right? And there's a character we'll be talking about in this video that, we won't get too ahead of ourselves, but there's a guy named Skarbloodwrath who, anyways, we'll get to that. But I think that Khorne as an army will, I don't know if they'll give them magic resist, because, magic is often used against Khorne, right? But I think they'll have some counterplay against magic. I don't know what. It could just be a baseline of magic resist, maybe if their health is above a certain threshold or something, I'm not sure. Or it could also just be that their characters actually have some counterplay to magic. That would be very interesting to see. But generally, Khorne, as a playable faction, right, has like, for example, in 40k, there's the Khorne Space Marines. They used to, I don't know, in 8th edition, it's 9th edition now, but in 8th edition, the World Eaters had an ability essentially where they could use a command point, and on a 4-up, there was a chance they would just straight up shut down a spell. So Khorne would just come out off his throne. He would just, backhand the spell into another dimension on a 4-up. And I think we could see something like that. Khorne needs to probably have some sort of anti-magic. Dwarves, of course, have it, right? They have the base 25% magic resist. I think Khorne will have something. I hope it's something unique. I hope they don't just get like the same magic resist. I think if they had like a cool mechanic, or maybe it was more conditional, not quite as good as Dwarves, but up there, I think that'd be really neat. Anyways, so in summary, I think we're going to get some sort of a modified frenzy, a unique Rage of Khorne ability. I don't think there's going to be magic. I think it'll be more in line with the Dark Elf, Cane buffs and those type of things, bound abilities rather than things that cost wounds of magic. And I do also think that the Khorne army is going to have some sort of an ability to negate magic, or at least help you kind of combat it, of course, since you don't have your own magic. So on that note, I think we can jump on over and talk about the legendary lords. So there's two names that really stand out. Of course, Creative Assembly did say in their post that there is going to be 9 legendary lords at the start of the game. So you have the 4 Chaos factions, which they've confirmed. We have Kislev, and then we have Grand Cathay. So that's 6 in total, but that's not all of them. There is probably going to be one or they did say there's going to be a pre-order faction, right? So that's going to be 7 factions with 9 lords. So what I think is going to happen is I think each of the mono chaos factions will start with 1 legendary lord. So that's going to be 4. That leaves us with 5 more between Kislev, Cathay, as well as whatever the DLC faction is, right? So, I have a feeling Kislev will have 2 probably. They'll probably have Ice Queen, and then they'll have some sort of a combat lord. Maybe it could be Boris. It could be the papa of the Ice Queen. I think Cathay will probably have 2 as well. And then I think the DLC faction may start with 1. I don't know. It's just a guess. I'm sure they'll get DLCs quite rapidly to fill out those lord slots. But I think each of the 4 Chaos factions is going to start with 1 big papa, just to kind of lead them in. So on that subject, we can get into talking about the legendary lord choices. There's kind of 2 candidates here. I think that, my opinion is I think it's going to be Skarbrand. Of course, demons are the new hot thing, right? There are some mortal followers of Khorne who would make pretty decent legendary lords, but I think coming out of the gates, they want to come in with the big thunder. We saw the Bloodthirster in the trailer. Skarbrand is the Bloodthirster of Bloodthirsters. He's the bad boy of Khorne. He's got a really, really cool set of lore for sure. And, again, I'm not going to go into the lore too much. They do have some really cool lore bits. I'm sure you can find this all over YouTube. But essentially, Skarbrand, I'll read a little bit for you. Known as the Exiled One, the Wrathful Reaper, or the Drinker of Blood, was once the greatest of Khorne's demons. In an eternity, a battle in the Blood God's name had brought Skarbrand's victories uncounted. It was he who tore down the gates of Slaaneish's first palace and visited ruin upon it. So you can see this he's basically just a super scary Bloodthirster, and I think that would be really cool. I would love to have some huge monstrous character. As far as how Bloodthirsters are going to play, I wouldn't like to see them be made into a bonus versus infantry character, because it would be really disappointing to see a Bloodthirster not be able to hold its own against other anti-large monsters. I would rather see a Bloodthirster be, something that's more well-rounded, like a generalist, right? It can fight monsters, it can fight infantry. Maybe it's not as specialized against either, but it would be pretty, I would be disappointed if it was a bonus versus infantry character. But this guy's going to be a monster, he's going to be like Kolek size. He's going to be, good mass. And it's interesting because Bloodthirsters are flying demons, right? They have the wings, right? But I'm curious if, I have a feeling that they're not going to fly unless, Creative Assembly goes really crazy and makes it so things can have a toggle on and off. Finally, Malagor will be able to fly, but yeah, it'll be really interesting to see how they do this. But I think it'd be cool if he could fly. I mean, that would make sense. But yeah, it's tricky. It's tricky. They're going to have to potentially, rework how that works. Because there are characters that have the peacock syndrome, which is like they have wings, but they can't fly, like Malagor, for example. I'm curious how they're going to do like flying demons and things like that. Because a lot of times in depictions of Bloodthirsters, we see them like moving around on the ground and running. But of course, they can't fly. We see in the Mark of Chaos trailer in that old Warhammer game. It lands from the sky, like it descends, right? And in many depictions on lore, they're swooping down. So I would hope he could fly. I hope he doesn't get afflicted by the Peacock Syndrome, but we'll see. So the other Lord that I think would be a really good starting legendary Lord would be Valkia the Bloody. But on that same note, I kind of feel like Valkia belongs more with Norska. Norska only has 2 legendary lords, and there's not that many candidates for Norska's legendary lord pool. So I'm more of the inkling that it's going to be Skarbrand for the Khorne mono faction, and that Valkia the Bloody will be a Norscan legendary lord that we'll be getting in game 3. Because obviously I think Chaos and Norska are going to be getting updated. But, you know, they could pull a curveball and put Valkia in the Khorne army, but basically Valkia, the Gore Queen, the Valkyrie, you know, she basically brings the fallen Norscan warriors to their equivalent of Valhalla, right? She's pretty badass for sure. She's a demon princess of Khorne who was once a Norscan warrior. Really, really cool bit of lore on her, but my prediction is that maybe we could see Valkia as a DLC lord for this faction, which would be cool, but I feel like we would see her in Norska maybe? I don't know, because Norska just only has 2 legendary lords. So many factions have like 6 lords, you know, and they're just sitting there all Walmart with 2. I would really like to see Valkia mixed in with Norska, but again, she would make a great Khorne lord, like for sure. She would be perfect for this faction. So if they did Valkia, that would be really cool. If they did Skarbrand, that'd be really neat. Who knows? Because I think it's more leaning towards Skarbrand too, since we saw a Bloodthirster in the cinematic. It's like oftentimes there's like a legendary version of a lord and then a basic version. So you guys get the picture. So next up, we're going to be talking about basic lords. For the basic lords, I think we're going to potentially have 3. So we'll have a Chaos Lord of Khorne. So this is like a champion of Khorne, basically. It's just like how you have a Chaos Lord in Chaos Undivided. It's just going to be a Khorne version, which whatever their unique army effects is, he'll probably have a cool item. He'll, of course, have like, and I think everything in the army, the unique effect might just be called the Mark of Khorne. I probably should have mentioned that earlier, but I think we'll have a basic Chaos Lord of Khorne who can, you know, do all that basic, you know, Lord stuff. He'll just be the cheapest variant. If you want to go really wide, he's your boy. Now, the next basic lord I think we're going to be seeing is a Demon Prince of Khorne. I think Demon Princes are going to be in every single faction for Chaos. I think Chaos Undivided will get one. I think Chaos Undivided is going to be getting Be'lakor, the Dark Prince. But anyways, I think that we'll have a Demon Prince of Khorne, Slaanesh, Tzeentch, Nurgle, each of which will have its own unique mechanics. I'm really interested to see how they're going to be doing Demon Princes, but they have to have one. It's super iconic. It gives you a smaller, cheaper form rather than having to get a greater demon. Like Demon Princes, for example, could be like monstrous. They could be like Nakai size, right? They're not going to be like a huge, big, you know, stomping bloodthirster that is a big target. I think a Demon Prince is a smaller target, yet it still is monstrous. And, you know, obviously with Khorne, it won't have access to magic, but generally Demon Princes do have some magical abilities as well. So the next basic lord, and probably the last one I think we're going to see, I think we'll have one legendary lord in the beginning, which will be Skarbrand. I think for the basic lord, I think we're going to get a Bloodthirster as well. So just a generic Bloodthirster, it'll be exponentially cheaper than Skarbrand. It won't be as strong. We see this all the time, right, in this game. We see the Marauder Chieftain can ride a mammoth, but so can Wulfric. We see the equivalent of that, right? So I think we'll be getting a big Bloodthirster, and it will be awesome. So heroes. We've been not talking about, but we've been essentially seeing a lot more heroes, right? We get Gotrek, we get Felix, we get the Green Knight, we get Ariel for the Wood Elves most recently, we get Gorich for the Skaven. I think Creative Assembly really is going down the choo-choo train for the cool, badass hero units, right? So for Khorne, I think there's actually some really, really cool candidates. I think the first one that we could see would be Scar Bloodwrath. And Scar Bloodwrath actually, so I could go on about the lore, but I just want to focus more on the army speculation. Scar Bloodwrath is basically just a super badass Khorne champion. And there's essentially the story of him, right? Where the first time he meets his death, because he's like, you know, fighting all these gnarly battles and he just has like this blind rage and he hasn't been killed. But essentially he goes to fight this Tzeentch sorcerer. I believe he's called Vitus the Liar. And he goes in, and this dude has like 999 cultists. And Scar just goes in there balls deep for Khorne. He's got his big old axe. He kills all of the cultists, right? And he's looking to get to the champion, which is the sorcerer. So when he gets to the Tzeentchian sorcerer is like cackling like Palpatine from behind the screen, behind some screen of sorcery, right? So then he kills Scar he like stabs him with his blade or something or other from behind the screen, and Scar dies. But then Khorne, who was, you know, watching all this shit go down, he's like, oh man, my boy just killed like almost 1,000 dudes by himself. And on top of that, he was killed in kind of a cowardly way. The guy like backstabbed, he cheated with magic, and Khorne hates magic, dude. He hates that shit. So basically, he brings Scar Bloodwrath back to life. All the blood of the cultists like goes back into Scar, and he comes back and he basically just gives the business to the sorcerer after that. So basically the whole thing with Scar is that he keeps coming back to life. Whenever he's killed in combat, he comes back to life from the blood of those who've been slain around him, and he becomes more and more blind with rage. He keeps forgetting his humanity, and he becomes even more and more of a berserker every time he dies. I think that would be a super badass inclusion, because how you could do this is he could have like a Heart of Avalorn type ability that when he dies the first time, much like Malice Darkblade, or he comes back, but he loses something when he comes back, right? So when he comes back, he just rampages. You can't control him. He attacks the nearest target. Maybe he loses life over time. I'm not sure. But I think that Scar Bloodwrath would be a very, very cool hero. And if you're going very narrow on the legendary lords, just one Skarbrand, right? I think this is a great way to give some flavor to the faction overall. So Scar Bloodwrath, I think, would be a very, very cool hero. So the next hero character or slot, I think this name is a little bit tricky. It's called like Scylla Angfingrim or something. Yeah, so we'll read a little bit here. I'll just give you the first sentence from the Warhammer Fantasy Wiki. So Scylla, known as the Scourgeborn, the talent of Khorne, the Blood Beast, was once a mighty and famed champion of Khorne, perhaps the greatest of the Blood Gods chosen, which it pretty much has about everyone, right, in their own unique lore. In his former life, he was nigh invincible and unmatched in battle, having slain some of the fiercest beasts and armies in services of the Norse god of war. So essentially, like, long story short, Scylla somehow becomes this like demonic gorilla of Khorne. You guys, of course, can see the art up on the screen, but this would be a pretty cool monstrous character. I don't know too much about this character's lore. I know a little bit more about Scar Bloodwrath. I think I ended up watching a video Italian Spartacus did talking about the lore for that character, or like Khorne characters a long time ago. But basically, it's just this this blood beast Khorne of gorilla, which I think would be pretty cool. The tabletop model for it is kind of neat, and I think it'd be really neat to have like 2 hero slots. But if I had to lean towards one, I don't know, I couldn't really. They're both really cool. So yeah, we have the Khorne gorilla, Scylla Angfingrim. We have Scar Bloodwrath, and then on top of that, I think we're going to get some a demon hero, which is going to be a Herald of Khorne. Herald of Khorne is basically a bloodletter hero that I think would be the one giving the supporting quote unquote not magic, but you guys get the picture, like runes and things like that. And last but not least, I think we could get a basic Exalted Hero of Khorne. This is going to be someone who is just like an Exalted Hero for Chaos Undivided, but has some unique traits of Khorne, might have a mark of Khorne, has its own activated buffs, all that sort of good stuff. You guys get the picture. Now, for all these heroes and characters, I think we're going to have mounts. For the mount option, I think for anyone, of course, that can ride a mount. So I think Scar might have one. I think the Exalted Hero, the Herald of Khorne can probably ride on one, etc., etc. So the mounts are going to be a Juggernaut, in my opinion. Juggernauts are those big metallic-looking doggos that the Khorne warriors were riding in the cinematic. They're basically like, obviously in Warhammer 40k, demon engines are somewhat common, right? You have these demon engines where they imbue the spirit of a demon into a machine and it becomes its own thing, right? But in this case, this is like the Warhammer fantasy version. They're made of like metal and machinery. And then they also have the spirit of a Khorne demon. I could be wrong, and forgive me guys if I'm getting some lore stuff wrong. I'm just like, again, learning the basics of all the lore and whatnot. It's been quite a bit of fun diving into it, but basically the Juggernaut is the it's just that mount you saw. It's like the big metallic looking rhinoceros, the Khorne Rhino. And I think a lot of characters in this roster will have access to that. Some of the heroes will. I think the Chaos Lord of Khorne can ride one. Not the Bloodthirster. He's a little bit too big for that, but you guys get the picture. One that I'm on the fence about, I think we might get it. Maybe it'll come with the DLC eventually, is going to be the Blood Throne. The Blood Throne is a mount that some of the demons ride. I think this could just be like the equivalent of a Chaos War Shrine. It just, gives buffs to nearby units. I think he could be rode maybe by a Herald of Khorne. That'd be a really cool, unique mount for him. He could, of course, have a Juggernaut and a Blood Throne, but you guys get the picture. And aside from that, I think we'll have a Chaos Dragon, Mark of Khorne, and a Chaos Steed with the Mark of Khorne. So next up, we do indeed have the Infantry. So Khorne, of course, I think is going to be a very infantry-focused faction. I think they will have some of the basic infantry that we have seen with the Warriors of Chaos. I think we'll have Marauders. I think we'll have basic Chaos Warriors. I think we'll have Chosen. I think we might get something in the vein of like throwing axes from Norska as well. I think Khorne's about throwing axes and that kind of thing. And I also think that for a faction that's fairly limited in its scope and capacity without magic, giving them some basic range tools would be useful. And last but not least, I do think we'll have some Forsaken that do have Mark of Khorne. So just to reiterate, I do think we'll have Marauders, I think we'll have Warriors, I think we'll have Chosen, Throwing Axes, and Forsaken. So a little bit of a mixture, of course, of the Norscan and Chaos Warrior roster. But where Khorne gets unique is I think they will have their own form of Berserker. So of course we have seen the Marauder Berserkers. I think that Khorne will get something special in this area, more specifically like Blood Warriors. If you guys have seen the Age of Sigmar models, I believe those came around also in the End Times. I think they were originally an End Times model. Some of you guys will have to let me know. But I think we're going to get our own Khorne Berserker that look really similar to those. And of course, you could probably see those up on the screen right now as well. And of course, in the trailer, we did get Bloodletters confirmed. I think Bloodletters will be very cool. I think they'll be glass cannon infantry units, probably hit really hard, probably have a bonus for infantry. But again, Khorne isn't really known for super heavy duty durability. I think Slaanesh is a little bit squishier in that regard. Obviously, we saw some of the Khorne units in the trailer, especially the Skull Crushers, are very heavily barded, right? So they have like heavy armor on them. They're a little bit slower. So I don't think this faction overall is going to be really squishy. I think it'll be kind of middle of the road in terms of durability, but of course their limitation will be magic and probably speed in regards to. That's not necessarily true though. Khorne seems like it seems like a fast roster with some of the cavalry and stuff we'll get to in monsters. But anyways. We'll get Bloodletters. A couple other things we might actually get. There's a couple specialist infantry, which are Wrathmongers and Skull Reapers. So I think it'd be really cool if Khorne gets those bad boys as well. So essentially, in terms of unique units, you get this Khorne Berserkers and Blood Warriors, Bloodletters, Wrathmongers, and Skull Reapers. So each of them could serve kind of a different purpose. The Berserkers could be the anti-infantry variant with perhaps low armor-piercing values. And then either the Wrathmongers or Skull Reapers could fill other roles, whether it be anti-large or anti-armor. And the Bloodletters, of course, can be mixed in there as well as perhaps a different variant of the bonus versus infantry, which, they have demonic swords. Who knows? Maybe they'll be the AP variant. But, on that same note, too, like you might see Chaos Marauders mixed in there, but maybe you're not going to see generic warriors. Maybe those will be filled by the Berserker spots. And, I think you should see Chosen of Khorne too and things like that. I would be really neat if they got like some new armor and also had the Mark of Khorne, which is going to probably be the army-wide ability. But we'll see. So again, in summary, for infantry, I think we're going to see Marauders, Warriors, Chosen, Throwing Axes, Forsaken, mixed with specialist units or Khorne-specific units of Khorne Berserker / Blood Warrior, Bloodletters, Wrathmongers, and Skull Reapers, which of course you guys can see up on the screen. And if you want to go read the lore about them and all that stuff, you should be able to find that pretty easily. So that's pretty much it for infantry. Now for cavalry, this is also quite neat. Okay, so let's break this down. I do not think that this roster is going to have basic Chaos Knights. We see basic Chaos Knights in Undivided. I think that will probably stay as an undivided thing. Most of the Chaos Demons have their own kind of variant of cavalry. And we saw this in the trailer. We saw these Skull Crushers, but we also didn't see Blood Crushers. Skull Crushers are the Juggernauts that are being rode by mortals. And then you have Skull Crushers, which are the variant that's being rode by a demon. I think we'll see both of these, and they'll both serve a bit of a different purpose. I think that the Skull Crusher, for example, might be, I don't know. I think the demonic one will probably be more like bonus versus infantry, whereas the one with the mortals will be a little bit more well-rounded, maybe like a questing knight type thing. Hard to say. But I actually spoke to some folks, and they mentioned that Skull Crushers themselves are somewhat similar. Juggernauts are very heavily barded. They were in tabletop, so they're slow. They're heavily armored, so probably more in vein of 60 to 66 speed. But, heavily armored, very hard hitting, but again, slower, kind of in the vein of like Empire Knights and Reichsguard Knights and things like that. So I don't know if we'll see Chaos Knights. It's certainly possible, but I think that might be a little bit redundant and would take away from the other cool unique cavalry units. I think we'll see Marauder Horsemen. I think, again, you have to give the faction some versatility, some anti-range tools. Otherwise, they'll just be really taken advantage of in the skirmish phase. I think we could see a Chaos Chariot, a Gorby's Chariot. I think we'll see Dragon Ogres for them most likely, but again, maybe not. There are some other monstrous units Khorne has that could perhaps fill the role of a Dragon Ogre, but I think it's likely that we'd see the basic Chariot kits with the Gorby's and Chaos Chariot plus Dragon Ogres. And again, for specialists, we talked about this. We have the Blood Crushers and the Skull Crushers, one of which is basically Juggernaut rode by a mortal, one of which is ridden by a demon. But, maybe we just start with one and, they save the other one for a DLC later on. Who knows? So next up, we have the War Machines and Monsters. So Khorne, I think, will have their own spawn. I think they'll have a Chaos Giant. Hell Cannon is one I do not think they're going to have. I think the Hell Cannon is going to be replaced by the Skull Cannon. So I think the Hell Cannon might stay something that is a Chaos Undivided unit. And then we get the Skull Cannons, which are a Khorne specialist unit. So if you guys haven't seen Skull Cannons, they're basically like these... it's basically like a mobile lawnmower artillery piece. It runs shit over with its spikes. It sucks them in, and it shoots their skull back out at the enemy. Now, I don't know if they're going to be incorporated in that way. They might just be an artillery piece that can shoot, but I think it's kind of a cool idea to have like a chariot that moves forward, can do damage in melee, and as it kills things in melee, it builds up a charge of actual like explosive firepower it can shoot. I think that's actually a really fun, cool mechanic. It'd be interesting to see. So again, I think we will get the Skull Cannon probably instead of the Hell Cannon. I think we'll get Trolls, probably basic Chaos Trolls and the armored variant. I think we'll get both of those. And again, they'll have the Mark of Khorne. Chaos Warshrine could be something we'd see, although this, Chaos Warshrine, I guess we have the... Khorne kind of has their own variant of that, though. Up top, we do, of course, have the... we talked about the Blood Throne, so maybe we're not going to see the Warshrine. I think the Warshrine probably will come as an augmentation to the Chaos Undivided roster, so just my 2 cents. So again, in summary, I don't think we'll get a Hell Cannon. I don't think we'll get a Warshrine here. I think we'll get the Skull Cannon and the Blood Throne instead. And as far as other specialist units go, I 100% think we're going to get the Bloodhounds of Khorne, or the Hounds of Khorne. That's going to be their Hound version. That's their Norscan Icewolf. That's their Chaos Warhound. They're going to get the Khorne Bloodhounds, which will probably just be like more aggressive, harder hitting. They're not going to have the frostbite of the Norscan Icewolves, but they'll be better in combat. Basically, is going to be how they're done. Furies are another one. I'm pretty sure these are already confirmed. If you look at the still concept art they released of the trailer, or the one that leaked actually, there's those like flying creatures which kind of have like draconic faces. I think they're called Furies, and I think they're like the Crow of Chaos. These might even be a unit that we see across all the Mono Chaos factions that are slightly augmented to fit that respective faction. But you can hear a Khorne Bloodhound barking outside actually. But I think we will see Furies for these guys, and I think that'll give them more mobility. So again, the forms of mobility, like, they're not going to be slow. You're going to have the Bloodhounds of Khorne, which are just getting in there, the Bloodhound gang, and they're going to be hunting. You're going to have Furies as well. They'll have, of course, Marauder Cavalry, and they'll have slower cavalry in the form of the Skull Crushers and Blood Crushers. But last but not least, so we talked about unique monsters. We talked about the Furies. We talked about the Skull Cannon, which I guess technically is like a War Machine artillery piece. And then we have the Slaughter Brutes. So Slaughter Brutes, I think, are going to be like pretty damn similar to like a Mutant Rat Ogre, but maybe bigger. So a little bit of a lore reading here. Slaughter Brute is a hulking monster of muscle and aggression. Such a creature cannot be broken by conventional means, and those foolish enough to try are torn apart and eaten for their efforts. That's lovely. Instead, a Slaughter Brute's mind is enslaved through magic to that of a Chaos Champion. Well, perhaps not magic in the case of Khorne, but well, I suppose it is. Khorne, maybe he slips a little magic in there here and there, but basically, I think, I think we're going to see Slaughter Brutes. Slaughter Brutes are like these huge, kind of just monstrous destroyers covered in spikes, very chaos, right? I think they'll be very similar in function to like a Mutant Rat Ogre, but perhaps a little bit bigger. So you can see this is like a pretty diverse roster, right? We have a fair amount of unique units across the board. Just to kind of go over everything once again, we've finished looking at what I think will be there. And on that note, I'd love to see what you guys think. Is there things you disagree with? Are there things that I'm just completely missing? Of course, I'm not like super deep into Warhammer Fantasy lore. I'm just kind of learning the basics. But after seeing the trailer, I got to scheming what would be in there. And if you guys enjoyed this, I'll do one for every one of the factions. But there's a fair amount of unique units. You have the Khorne Berserker units, the Bloodletters, Wrathmongers. You have the Skull Reapers. You have the Blood Crushers, Skull Crushers. And what's cool is even the generic units we talked about can be made unique with the Mark of Khorne mechanics. So they serve a very different niche, right? Like a Chaos Warrior with the Mark of Khorne, or a Chosen Mark of Khorne, should be vastly different than a Chosen with the Mark of Nurgle, right? So I'm really excited to kind of see how they implement that. But anyways, guys, hopefully you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you agree. Who do you think is going to be the Legendary Lord? What do you think is going to be their base roster? What units do you think we'll see? Which ones do you think will not? Is there anything from the earlier editions of Warhammer I completely missed that you guys think will be incorporated in the video as well? If so, let me know in the comments below. And until next time, you guys stay safe. We'll probably be doing one of these for Nurgle next. Nurgle is one that I'm actually relatively familiar with because I play Nurgle on tabletop. I have some Nurgle demons. I have a Death Guard army, so I kind of know the basics because essentially the demons in 40k are kind of interchangeable with fantasy. They like use a lot of the same demons and all that sort of good stuff. So I know a little bit about those bad boys. All right, guys, thanks again for watching. Blood for the Blood God, all that sort of good stuff. Skulls for the Skull Throne too. Can't forget about that. And again, guys, the hype train continues all the way over to Warhammer 3. See you guys next time, and take care.